Welcome back to EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and today we're tackling something that's moved from the future tense to right now. EU AI Act Readiness. We've got Sam with us, and we're going to dig into what this actually means for enterprises, especially those operating in places like Oulu. Sam, the EU AI Act feels like it's been coming forever. Why is 2025-2026 the real inflection point?
Great question. The Act has technically been on the books, but the enforcement teeth are coming now. By 2026, high-risk AI systems need to meet stringent conformity assessments, documentation requirements, and risk management protocols. What's wild is that 68% of enterprises surveyed still don't know which of their systems actually qualify as high risk. That's a ticking clock situation.
That statistic is genuinely alarming. So if you're running an AI system in HR or in credit decisions or customer service, you probably think you know the rules, but you might not. What does high risk actually mean in practical terms?
The Act defines it pretty clearly in two buckets. First, systems used in genuinely high-stakes applications, employment decisions, credit decisions, law enforcement support, educational tracking, critical infrastructure. Second, AI systems that are inherently high risk based on how capable they are and how they're deployed. So, a voice AI agent in a contact center, that's high risk. An HR screening tool? High risk. A credit decisioning engine? Absolutely high risk. The scope is broader than people realize.
And here's what keeps me up at night. McKinsey data shows 47% of European enterprises have deployed AI in customer-facing applications, but only 31% have formal governance frameworks. That gap is massive. Sam, what's the actual compliance burden look like for one of these high-risk systems?
It's multifaceted. You need a risk management system. That's systematic identification and mitigation of foreseeable risks, like discrimination, data leakage, model drift. You need rigorous data governance, meaning complete documentation of training datasets, bias testing, quality assurance. Then there's conformity assessment, either third-party or internal, following EU standards like EN ISO IEC 42001. And crucially, you need genuine human oversight, not just a checkbox, but meaningful human control over outputs.
That last point is really important. Human in the loop isn't new, but the Act makes it non-negotiable for high-risk systems. What does that actually look like when you're building these compliance frameworks?
You need to design workflows where humans retain meaningful decision-making authority. If an AI system is recommending hiring decisions, there has to be a human review step with the ability to override. If it's credit decisioning, same thing. The human can't be a rubber stamp. That requires rethinking how teams work and where AI actually sits in the decision chain.
That's a fundamental shift from AI makes decisions faster to AI informs decisions responsibly. Let's zoom out. For an organization just starting this journey, where should they even begin? What's the first move?
Start with a rigorous AI inventory and classification exercise. Map every AI system in your organization. Understand its purpose, its scope, and its risk profile. That's not trivial. Many organizations discover they have more AI systems than they realized, in places they didn't expect. Once you know what you've got, you can prioritize high-risk systems for compliance investment.
And that leads to governance structure, right? Because this can't be a siloed compliance problem. It needs board-level attention.
Exactly. You need an AI governance committee with cross-functional representation, legal, technical, business, ethics. You need chief AI officer accountability, and you need the board aware of AI risk. The Act essentially mandates this. It's not optional elegance, it's mandatory structure. Organizations that embed governance early actually reduce friction and cost down the line.
Let's talk about the teeth of this thing. What happens if you don't comply? Because I imagine the penalties are designed to get attention.
They're severe. Penalties reach $30 million or 6% of annual global turnover for violations involving high-risk systems. That's not a fine you absorb quietly. For a mid-sized enterprise, that's existential. And it's not just financial. It's reputational, operational, legal risk. Companies that move early aren't doing this out of fear alone. They're gaining competitive advantage because they're building compliant operations that actually scale.
So the calculus is clear. Start now, avoid disruption and penalties, and potentially outpace competitors who are scrambling later. For enterprises in Oulu and the Nordic region specifically, are there regional considerations that matter?
Absolutely. The Finnish Data Protection Authority will be enforcing these requirements locally, so regulatory attention is real and close. Nordic enterprises tend to have strong data privacy cultures already. GDPR implementation was thorough here. That's actually an asset. But the AI Act goes beyond data privacy. It's about risk management and governance. Organizations here can leverage their privacy maturity, but they can't assume compliance translates one-to-one.
That's a nuanced point. Privacy compliance is necessary but not sufficient for AI Act readiness. Let me ask you this. If you're an enterprise that's already fairly mature on AI governance, what's the accelerant? What gets you from we're doing okay to we're EU AI Act ready?
3 things. First, formalize your documentation. The Act demands technical documentation, training data sources, performance metrics, risk mitigations, bias testing results. If you're not systematizing that now, start. Second, build your conformity assessment process, whether internal or third party. It's not a one-time audit, it's ongoing evaluation. Third, stress test your human oversight mechanisms. Make sure they're genuinely meaningful, not performative. Those 3 moves compress the timeline significantly.
Documentation, assessment, and authentic oversight. That's actionable. Last question before we wrap. What's the mindset shift organizations need to make? Because I sense there's a psychological element here. Moving from AI as an innovation play to AI is an operational governance mandate.
That's exactly it. The best organizations I see aren't fighting the Act. They're embracing it as a framework that actually drives better AI development. Compliance forces you to understand your systems deeply, manage risks systematically, and maintain human oversight. Those aren't constraints. They're good practices that make AI more reliable and trustworthy. The enterprises that win aren't the ones that do bare minimum compliance. They're the ones that use it as a catalyst for building genuinely defensible, scalable AI operations.
I love that reframing. Compliance as a catalyst rather than a burden. Sam, thanks for walking through this. For our listeners, if you want to dive deeper into EU AI Act readiness, governance frameworks, and the maturity model for compliance, head over to etherlink.ai, where we have the full article with more details, frameworks, and resources specific to enterprise readiness. This is Alex and Sam on EtherLink AI Insights. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Stay compliant, stay strategic, and build AI systems that stakeholders actually trust.